I'm a logician, and sometimes doing logic makes me feel really, really stupid. So let me tell you what I do with that. Hello everyone, welcome to The Attic. My name's Mark Jago. I'm a philosophy professor in the UK. Today I want to talk you through some of the difficulties I have with the way I feel about myself and my own abilities when I'm working through some difficult problems, and how I think that might help you, whether you're a researcher, whether you're a student, or whatever you do. So if you're finding this kind of material useful, do me a favour, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon to get updates. As a researcher, my work kind of falls into two main camps. There's the traditional mainstream philosophy, and there's also formal mathematical logic, and I do roughly about half of each. So let me tell you a little bit first about how research in logic goes. You might be studying logic, or you might have read a bit about it or seen some videos and kind of get the impression that it's a fixed subject. But that's not really how it goes at all. There's always new work being done in logic. There are new results about old logics, and there's whole new kinds of logics, new systems of logics being invented and reasoned about all the time. And there's also new applications of logic. So practical applications out there in industry, in the real world, and also philosophical applications using existing bits of logic to shed new light on old philosophical problems. So I took a quick look on the Phil Papers archive, and there's around 1,000 papers published just in 2020 that have got logic in the title. Obviously, not all logic papers have logic in the title, so there's likely to be lots and lots more papers being written every year just on new work in logic. So it's a really, really thriving area, and there are new kinds of logics being developed all the time. So if you take a look at a logic textbook or a logic journal article or whatever, you might be forgiven for thinking that given the starting place, the end point, the results that you get in that paper were always going to be there. You are always going to get from that starting point to that end point. And you might think that all that researcher had to do is take a little journey from A to B, doing a few proofs along the way. That's kind of how it seems from reading the paper. And often, if the writer has done a good job, the results seem really intuitive. And it's almost as if, as the reader, you're just guided through that proof thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. Let me give you an example of this from Modal logic. One of the big results there is this correspondence between the axioms telling us how the box and the diamond for necessity and possibility work, and conditions on the accessibility relation. That's the relation that tells us which worlds are considered possible from which. And pretty much for every axiom, there's a nice, neat condition on the accessibility relation. It's a really nice example of how something that's really quite an important result doesn't take that much logic to establish. Okay, so you might think if you can work out these results with pretty much just first year logic, then people who actually know what they're doing, people whose job is to be a researcher in logic, this stuff should have been a piece of cake for them, right? But that's not how it went at all. Semantics for modal logic, it took researchers a long, long time to come up with the semantics. And even when the semantics were there, it took a long, long time to come up with these nice correspondence results. So there is quite a disconnect between the simplicity and the elegance of the results that get presented when they're published and the difficulty you have in coming up with them in the first place. What is it you're trying to prove? How are you going to go about doing that? How are you going to come up with something that feels worthwhile? And this is kind of where I have a lot of the problems. It's a bit like that blank page feeling when you're trying to write something, an essay or whatever, and you're just looking at a blank page thinking, well, I just don't know where to go. So when I'm working on a new piece of logic, trying to come up with some results, kind of what I do is I've got lots of these notebooks and I just scribble for pages and pages and pages. That's about 20 pages that I've covered this week alone, and I don't know if any of it makes much sense, but often what I find at the end of the day is I kind of look back over what I've done and I think, I haven't done anything of value today. I haven't really come up with anything. I've just been stumbling around. I don't know where I'm going. I've got no idea what I'm meant to be doing. Why am I doing this? Oh, what a waste of time I am. And then I start looking at the work that other people are doing, like their published work, and I think, oh, this would probably be easy for them. Like if they were doing it, they could probably do a much better job than me. And at that point, I have to kind of take a look at myself and say, look, Mark, stop going down this route. This is just your brain trying to make life difficult for yourself. All these negative thoughts that are coming about. I often come back to this quote that I found years and years and years ago. Don't worry, it's not an inspirational quote. It's about mathematics. So it's from the mathematician Andrew Wiles, the guy who first proved Fermat's last theorem. So he's describing how his mathematical process feels to him from the inside. And he's likening it to walking around a big mansion in the dark. You enter the first room of the mansion and it's completely dark. You stumble around, bumping into the furniture, but gradually you learn where each piece of furniture is. Finally, after 6 months or so, you find the light switch. You turn it on and suddenly it's all illuminated. You can see exactly where you were. I always try to remember this quote because this guy, Andrew Wiles, he's one of the greatest mathematicians of the last 30 years or so. And if he describes his own experiences fumbling around in the dark for 6 months or so, then I feel a little bit better about my own fumbling around in the dark for a couple of weeks. So let me tell you some of the practical things that I do to try to get through a difficult piece of work, a difficult piece of research, and try to get these negative thoughts under control. So first up, I'm looking to set reasonable goals. So a goal shouldn't be something like, get this paper done, or come up with some results. The trouble with goals like that is, how do you know when you've got there? How do you know when the paper's done? How do you know when you've got a result or enough results? That's not really a helpful goal. Rather, you should come up with something specific like, okay, I'm going to set out precisely what this system of logic looks like, and I'm going to try to prove soundness, completeness, compactness, or whatever. Okay, so you're going to have a list of things that you're going to try and do. You might start this process by having your ideal goals. Ideally, I'd like to come up with a full axiomatization and show that it's complete. But maybe that's just beyond what you're able to do or what you're able to do in the amount of time that you've got to do it. So you've got to have a reasonable goal, okay? So maybe you're just going to come up with some simple results that give you a feel for how this system works. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm doing at the moment. I'm not really thinking about the full bunch of results that I would like to have. I'm just thinking about, can I get a few results that gives me a little feel for how this system is going to work? That's something I would be happy with. It would constitute a good enough achievement for, let's say, a couple of weeks of work. 2, we're going to break the big problem down into smaller chunks. 2 main reasons for doing this. 1 is it just makes it more achievable. Rather than do the big, difficult, hard thing, it's let's break that big, difficult, hard thing down into 4 or 5 simpler to achieve things and have a go at each one in turn. That makes each of them more manageable. Number 3, work on whatever you're feeling most motivated to work on at that particular point of time. Working on something that you are enthused about, that you're excited about working on, for me, is one of the most important things about keeping motivated in research in general. Okay, so let's suppose I'm lucky and I wake up and I've got a whole day free for research. How do I feel motivated about that? Well, I have to have a problem that I'm excited about. So having the big problem broken up into a range of 4 or 5 little problems, I can go and pick whichever one I'm most excited about at the moment, work on that, and eventually they all get done. Number 4, failures can themselves be valuable for a number of reasons, right? So suppose you're trying to prove something and you just can't do it for whatever reason. Well, then you kind of learn something. You've learned a bit of experience that might help you in the next thing you do. That technique doesn't work for that kind of thing. If you've discovered that a certain thing just isn't doable, like not just that you couldn't do it, but it is impossible to do this thing, then you've learned something. That is a result in its own right. You have discovered something that sounds like it might be valuable to others as well. Number 5, and perhaps this is the most important one, share this stuff with others, the academic community or the student community or whatever. Collaboration is a fantastic tool for helping you through problems. And I think academic research works best when it's done as a community. If you're writing an essay for university, yeah, it has to be your own work. What you hand in finally has to be all your own work. But the work you do along in preparation for that essay, that can all be shared with a group of friends, a group of students who are also working on that. It's a really great way of staying motivated and learning new points of view. Okay, guys, so I wanted to share this kind of stuff with you because I have for the last couple of weeks been working on a bit of research. I've been getting really down about it. I've noticed those feelings. They've been creeping in, and I started working through, okay, how am I going to deal with these things? And I just had to remind myself, these are the things I like to do to make me feel good and motivated about research. And then I thought, you know what? Chances are other people go through this. In fact, I'm sure other people go through this as well. So why don't I share these thoughts with you guys? So if any of this stuff helps you out, that is really great. If you've enjoyed this content, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell icon to get updates. And I will see you back here soon.